Hi, it's Lori from Coast to Coast Craft Girls coming to you from the West Coast. Today I wanted to share a card I made. It's fairly simple, but I made using the Sheena Swirling Leaves and Wild Roses. Well, this is a stamp and embossing folder. I'm going to use a different embossing folder and stamp on the next one, but I'm going to do it the same thing. So you could, but I'm just going to use a different embossing folder and stamp, so you'll be able to see two different ways of doing it. This one's nice and bright. I loved that. But let's get started. Okay. So for this one, I'm going to use the embossing folder. I think this came in one of the magazines. It's just kind of it's a 2D embossing folder from Crafter's Companion with sort of a rose print all over it. And I'm going to use this stamp set. And what I did is, I've already done some of the work. I took a couple pieces of paper and I used my aqua markers on this one. The other one I used inks, but this one I used the Blossom and Bud Green aqua markers. And I created just some background papers with the pinks and the greens. I just scribbled the water onto my mat, and actually I stamped and colored the rose pattern and used a mask to create the bud, and then I cut it out with that after watercoloring it. And after I watercolored it, then, which you could use markers or pen or pencils or whatever you want to color it. I used the aqua markers, and then I had color left on my mat, and I thought, oh well, I'll just create my background paper with the leftover color off the mat. So I created it, and I'm going to put the stamp out of the way. Let me set that there. So I just scribbled onto my mat and then spritzed it with water and picked it up. But I did that earlier because I wanted the paper to dry, and I like it better when it kind of dries on its own. And the way that I did this is I did the back paper with a deboss and the front paper with an emboss. Let me show you on this one. So on this one, this back paper, this is the deboss. So I don't know if you can see, but the pattern is actually pressed in. And this is an emboss, so the pattern is pushed up. And I'm going to do that same thing on this one. So to do that on my background paper, you have to think about, now this is the raised edge and this is the depressed edge. So this, putting it in this way, is going to give me an emboss pattern because it's going to push the card up into those holes. So if I want the deboss, I have to do it this way. So I'm going to do the deboss on this side. So we just line that up with our pattern. And yeah, easier said than done. Get it straight and run that through the machine. It's a 2D folder, but I like to throw in my metal shim just to give it a little bit of extra oomph. So now, as you can see, this is my emboss side, but I've got my color on my deboss side. Now I'm going to do this one on the emboss side. So we're going to flip it over and line this up just anywhere that you want it. Put mine up about there. And run that through. So that gives me my deboss side and my emboss side. And then I've got my stamp. Now, again, you could use any stamp you wanted. I actually picked this stamp because I wanted to use this embossing folder, and it kind of went with it. Now, if you just put it on there, because these are so similar, it just kind of gets lost. So I tried a couple of things. So one thing is I made a second piece of this, but with a lot more green, because I thought it might stand out a little better. And then once I embossed it, I went over it with a pink ink pad to give it a little more color. So that's an option. But I've also got my Illustrator pen. Now I could also matte it with a darker green color or something. And this is forest green. And I'll show you a little trick. If you don't want to matte, just take your marker, and you should be able to do this with any marker. I mean, you could use your aqua marker probably, but I'm just going to use my Illustrator with a dark color, or you could use a gold or any pen and go around. And it gives you a little bit of a faux matte. Now you can also ink the edges, but look how much more that stands out than it did before. I'm going to try it with this one too and see what I think. This one might be so much the same that I may have to actually matte and layer it. I did matte and layer the other one, so I may have to, but I thought I'd try this method. It's always good to try it. If you don't like it, you can always go back. So I'm going to do the same on this card. And if I don't like it, I'll just go get a darker piece of paper and matte and layer it. But I thought I'd try this and see if I could save myself some cardstock. So there's that. And I have that with that as an option. I'm going to raise these up so we'll get a little bit of, or this one. It's always good to try different things and so you get to see my thought process here. I think I like this one, but it definitely needs a matte and layer. So let me get some dark color cardstock. Might be able to use nice black, I think. Black's always a really nice matte if you use a really thin. Let's try that. Let's try it and see. Yeah, definitely. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do my matte for this one, and then I'm going to get it out so I can use the smaller one. Yeah, that's probably just about right. Now before I glue that on, I want to gut that out. So I'm going to use my paper trimmer. An inch all the way around. And this doesn't have to be perfect because it's not going to show anyway. So that's that mat. Then we're going to put this onto here. So I'm going to just straighten up that edge. edge. So now I have two good edges. We're going to go sort of put that on there. Needs to go about right there. That's about right. And this is a really easy way to do a thin matte layer. I mean, you can measure it, but that gets it close. But I find it's almost easier to kind of put it on there and decide where you want it. And then... Okay. That should do it. And let's put this together. And I'll save that one for another day. I thought I was going to like it more, but turns out I didn't. That's why it's always good to just try things and try it out and see what, what you like. Because sometimes, for me, until I'm putting it together and kind of, for the final construction or whatever, I'm never sure what I'm gonna like. And I like my wet glue because I can wiggle that into place. Seems like such a shame to cover up that embossed piece. But I do like using both the embossed side and the debossed side just for some different looks. Now, whenever you have an embossed or a debossed card and you're layering it, especially one like this that's been watercolored, it's been wet, it's hard to get it, to get stick all the way around. So sometimes it's good to just set something heavy on it while you're doing other things. So this isn't really heavy, but it'll work. I'm just going to set my plate on there and that'll kind of flatten it and hold that down while I'm doing this. So I'm going to attach this because I'm actually going to use some foam tape to raise this up. So let's get that on there. Just set that in there. Put some foam tape on there. This isn't really thick foam tape. It's fairly thin, but it'll give us a little bit of dimension, which is nice. Okay, we're going to put some foam tape on this one. Like a little bit of dimension on each layer. Take that off. Oh, there it is. So as you can see, just putting that plate on there for the few, little bit of time while I was gluing those other things helps keep that stuck down. It doesn't take a lot of weight. It just takes that constant pressure, and just the weight of that Gemini plate was really enough. And I like to put just a little bit of glue on my foam tape. I think it helps keep it from coming off. Make sure you get your card right side up and centered. And then we're going to do the same thing with this. And then you could add a sentiment. I tend to not put sentiments on my cards until I know what I'm going to be using them for. So, and I'm not sure what I'm going to use this for, so I haven't yet. A lot of times I even don't put sentiments on the front at all. I just we'll put a sentiment in the back on the inside. But this one, now I could matte that with some black as well, but I don't think it needs it because the white is such a contrast. But if you wanted to, you certainly could. And there we go. 2 versions of that card. This one using the Sheena elements and this one using the rose. I think this was from Rose Garden or wasn't Vintage Rose. Can't remember. I think it was from the Rose Garden collection. But anyway, and then this stamp is just a Crafter's Companion rose stamp. Anyway, hope you like that. Enjoy.